A 3-hour window? That's all it took. Fighter jets tore across the sky. Bombs fell on command centers. Missile sites, coastal defenses, gone. But this wasn't a random strike. Every target was chosen. Every weapon was precise. And somewhere in Tehran, the silence afterward said more than any statement ever could. Because what happened next, nobody saw coming. Before we go any further, welcome to the Siege Report. If you've been with us before, you already know we don't do noise. We break down what's actually happening on the ground, calmly, clearly, one strike at a time. And if this is your first time here, consider hitting that subscribe button. Think of it like keeping a trusted friend on speed dial. You don't call them for gossip, you call them when you need the real story told straight, all without the chaos. That's what we aim to be for you every single day. So go ahead, tap subscribe, and join the family who never misses a briefing. Now, before we dive in, tell us in the comments, where are you watching from today? We'd love to know how far this reaches. On the night of July 29th into the early hours of July 30th, United States Central Command carried out one of the most extensive strike operations seen in this campaign so far. For nearly 3 hours, American forces targeted dozens of sites belonging to the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps across southern Iran. The operation closed at approximately 10:00 p.m. Eastern Time, and by the next morning, CENTCOM had confirmed the scale of what had taken place. According to the official release, the strikes hit military, command centers, missile and drone facilities, coastal surveillance positions, and maritime capabilities. The stated goal was clear: to reduce the threat that Iran and its proxy forces pose to American personnel, commercial shipping routes, and neighboring Gulf nations. This was not a symbolic gesture. It was a coordinated effort to dismantle infrastructure that Iran has relied on to project power across the region. Photographs released after the operation revealed the range of aircraft and equipment involved. F-16 fighter jets were seen launching from a carrier deck. Ground images showed what appeared to be a mobile command truck, badly damaged, possibly used to direct drone operations. Other images pointed to Iranian naval vessels that had been hidden and later located, along with what looked like a tunnel carved into a hillside, a likely storage or launch point for rocket or missile systems. Perhaps the most notable image, though, was one that received far less attention than it deserved. It showed an F-16 fighter jet loaded with GBU-38 and GBU-54 precision bombs, both weighing around 500 pounds, along with GBU-39 small-diameter bombs carrying 250-pound warheads. These smaller, more precise weapons suggest a deliberate strategy, one aimed at striking specific targets while limiting damage to surrounding areas. This detail matters because the IRGC has a well-documented pattern of placing its facilities inside civilian areas, often near hospitals, schools, or universities, using the local population as cover. Choosing smaller guided munitions over larger bombs indicates an effort to strike military targets precisely without expanding the human cost of the operation. CENTCOM's statement carried a second message embedded within it, one aimed less at the public and more at Tehran directly. The release noted that more than 50,000 American service members remain deployed across the Middle East, described as vigilant, focused, and ready. This was not simply a status update. It was a pointed reminder to Iran's leadership of the scale of force positioned nearby, a message meant to be read as much as it was meant to inform. Iranian state media offered its own account of the night, reporting explosions in several locations, including Bushehr, Abu Musa, Kish Island, and Keshem Island. Iranian outlets claimed there was no confirmed damage from the American side, a claim that stood in direct contrast to the extensive list of targets CENTCOM said had been struck. This gap between official Iranian statements and the documented strike list reflects a pattern that has repeated throughout this conflict: public denial paired with private losses. Meanwhile, the economic pressure on Iran continued to build. A naval blockade, enforced alongside the strikes, has been steadily restricting Iran's ability to move oil through the region. Some estimates suggest Iran is losing close to $500 million a day due to disrupted exports, much of it tied to sanctioned or illicit oil sales. Combined with the military losses from the strikes themselves, the pressure on Tehran is mounting on two fronts at once, one measured in destroyed infrastructure, the other in lost revenue. Taken together, this operation represents more than a single night of strikes. It reflects a broader campaign designed to weaken Iran's military capacity while simultaneously straining its economy. The scale, precision, and timing of the operation all point to a calculated approach, one built to send a message that extends well beyond the immediate battlefield. What remains to be seen is how Iran's leadership chooses to respond, and whether restraint or retaliation will define the next phase of this confrontation. To understand why this operation unfolded the way it did, it helps to look at the aircraft chosen to carry it out. The F-16 is the most widely used fighter jet in the United States Air Force, and it served as the main platform for this mission. Its selection was not about flash or reputation. Military analysts point to 3 practical reasons instead: how many are available for use, how much weaponry the aircraft can carry, and how reliably it performs mission after mission. On a single-engine airframe, the F-16 can hold an impressive amount of ordnance, which makes it a dependable workhorse rather than a specialized tool used only in rare situations. Some have compared the F-16 to a high-performance motorcycle, quick, responsive, and built for speed the moment the throttle opens. When a pilot engages the afterburner, there's a brief pause as the engine spools up and then the aircraft accelerates rapidly. That combination of speed and maneuverability, paired with its survivability in contested airspace, is part of why it remains central to missions like this one. The weapons attached to the jet tell their own story. This particular aircraft was seen carrying GBU-39 small diameter bombs, each with a 250-pound warhead. These are far from ordinary gravity bombs. They are equipped with small fold-out wings that deploy after release, allowing them to glide toward a target with remarkable accuracy. Their range extends beyond 60 nautical miles from the point of release, and newer versions include artificial intelligence capable of recognizing specific target shapes, such as the outline of a tank or a satellite dish used for communications. 4 of these bombs can be mounted on a single rack, meaning one aircraft, flying one pass, has the potential to strike 4 separate targets. Given that IRGC facilities are increasingly scattered and hidden within populated areas, this level of precision matters more than raw explosive power. Alongside the small diameter bombs, the aircraft also carried APKWS rockets, laser-guided systems built by BAE Systems and officially designated the AGR-20. These rockets attach to a standard 17mm rocket body and use a laser guidance kit developed over roughly 12 years of production in New Hampshire and Texas. Each rocket costs around $24,900 to fire, a sharp contrast to interceptor missiles like the Patriot system, which can run past $1 million per shot. This cost difference is significant. When facing waves of inexpensive drones, using a multi-million-dollar missile to shoot down a device that costs a fraction of that price is simply inefficient. The APKWS offers a far more sustainable way to counter these threats without draining resources meant for larger, more critical engagements. Earlier this year, the Air Force allocated $145 million toward an upgraded dual-mode version of the APKWS, which adds an infrared sensor on top of the existing laser guidance. This upgrade allows a pilot to briefly illuminate a target with a laser just long enough to start the engagement, after which the rocket continues guiding itself toward the target. This means the pilot does not need to keep tracking the target for the rocket's entire flight time, freeing attention to scan for other threats nearby. In high-stakes environments, especially during nighttime missions conducted using night vision equipment, this kind of automation reduces risk considerably. A pilot who is not fixated on a single target for an extended period is far better positioned to notice new dangers approaching. Altogether, this combination of aircraft and weaponry reflects a broader shift in how these operations are being carried out. Precision-guided munitions with growing autonomy, paired with a reliable and heavily armed fighter jet, allow forces to strike multiple targets accurately in a single mission, while reducing risk to pilots and limiting damage beyond the intended target. As IRGC infrastructure continues to disperse into civilian areas, this approach to warfare, precise, efficient, and increasingly automated, is likely to define how future operations unfold. While American forces carried out their strikes with calculated precision, Iran's leadership was already dealing with the fallout of a failed gamble 2 nights earlier. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps had launched ballistic missiles toward Muwafaq Salti Air Base in Jordan, a site Iranian commanders reportedly believed housed a Central Command headquarters. 5 missiles left their launch rails that night. Not one of them reached its target. A combined effort between Jordanian air defense systems and American forces intercepted every single missile before it could cause damage. Central Command later described the attempt plainly, calling it exactly what it was: a surprise attack that failed because of coordinated defense and rapid response. That failed strike set the tone for what followed. Well, when American forces launched their own 3-hour operation the next night, Iranian state media offered a strikingly different version of events. Reports acknowledged explosions in several coastal areas, yet officials insisted there had been no confirmed damage on the American side of the ledger. This pattern of denial has become familiar throughout the conflict. Visual evidence and American statements point to substantial destruction, while Iranian outlets downplay losses almost entirely, choosing narrative control over acknowledgement. Part of the reason for this disconnect may lie in who actually bears the cost of these strikes. Iran's senior leadership operates from a position largely insulated from the consequences unfolding along the coast and within IRGC facilities. Decisions are made from a distance, while the burden of retaliation and loss falls on lower-ranking personnel and the infrastructure built to support them. This separation allows leadership to maintain an aggressive posture in public statements, even as the practical capacity to follow through continues to erode. Beyond the military dimension, an economic battle has been unfolding in parallel. A sustained naval blockade has been restricting Iran's ability to move oil through regional waters, cutting into a revenue stream that has long funded both government operations and support for allied militant groups. Estimates suggest these disruptions are costing Iran close to $500 million each day, a staggering figure that compounds with every week the blockade continues. This financial pressure connects directly to Iran's pattern of proxy warfare. For years, Tehran has funneled resources to armed groups across the region, including forces in Iraq and Houthi fighters in Yemen, using them as extensions of its own military reach without direct confrontation. Central Command's recent statements have begun naming this connection more explicitly, pointing directly at Iran's role in directing these proxy operations rather than treating them as separate, unaffiliated actors. This shift matters. By openly attributing proxy attacks to Iranian direction, the United States and its allies are removing the layer of deniability that Tehran has relied on for years. Iran can no longer distance itself as easily from attacks carried out by allied militias, which places its leadership in a more exposed position both militarily and diplomatically. Yet even as that shield weakens, Iran appears unlikely to change course. The continued willingness to launch ballistic missiles, even during periods of informal ceasefire, suggests a leadership driven more by frustration and financial strain than by strategic patience. Further evidence of the region's volatility surfaced far from Iran's coastline. In eastern Poland, an F-16 pilot was scrambled after radar detected what appeared to be drone activity approaching from Russian airspace. Upon reaching the X-Aude area, the pilot found only a crater and scattered fragments. Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk stated that evidence pointed to a Russian Kh-101 cruise missile, one that Poland had been prepared to intercept before it was either shot down or malfunctioned before the F-16 arrived. While unrelated on the surface, this incident underscores a broader theme running through the current global landscape. Multiple fronts, from the Persian Gulf to Eastern Europe, are testing the readiness of Western defense systems simultaneously, stretching attention and resources across very different theaters at once. Together, these developments paint a picture of a regime under mounting pressure from several directions. Military losses it cannot fully conceal, an economy bleeding revenue by the day, and a proxy network increasingly exposed to direct attribution. How Tehran chooses to respond in the coming days may determine whether this conflict remains contained or expands further across an already strained region. As the current campaign against Iran continues, analysts are increasingly looking beyond the aircraft flying tonight's missions and toward the systems expected to shape the next phase of this conflict. Among the most talked about developments are two advanced drone platforms, the Anduril Fury and the Shield AI X-Bat. Neither has been officially confirmed as active in this theater yet, but both represent where this kind of warfare appears to be heading, and their potential involvement is drawing close attention from those tracking the region. These are not simple surveillance drones. They are designed to operate alongside manned aircraft, extending the reach and awareness of pilots flying in contested airspace. Picture an F-15E or F-16 supported by several of these drones flying overhead, each one scanning for threats, spotting enemy drones before they get close, and feeding that information back in real time. For a single pilot managing a high-stakes mission, having that extra layer of eyes above and around the aircraft could make an enormous difference in both safety and effectiveness. This kind of support becomes especially relevant given the type of threats currently facing coalition forces. Drone attacks aimed at energy infrastructure in Saudi Arabia highlight how these smaller, harder-to-detect threats have become a persistent problem across the region. Traditional air defense systems were not built with swarms of low-cost drones in mind, and closing that gap is part of what makes these newer autonomous systems so valuable. Alongside the Fury and X-Bat, another system worth watching is the Anduril Thunder, a platform designed specifically to help protect helicopters operating in similarly contested environments. Its capabilities may also extend to supporting older aircraft like the A-10, which continues to play a role in these operations despite its age. The coalition structure behind these missions is also evolving. Reports point to growing cooperation between American forces and Saudi Arabia, working together on what is known as suppression of enemy air defenses, missions built around identifying and neutralizing the systems that protect an adversary's most valuable assets before striking the intended targets. This kind of joint operation requires trust, coordination, and shared intelligence, and its expansion suggests a broader regional effort to confront Iran's military network rather than a campaign carried out by the United States alone. That network itself continues to shift in response to sustained pressure. As American strikes have systematically dismantled IRGC headquarters and command centers, Iranian forces appear to be dispersing further into populated cities, spreading their infrastructure across a wider and more fragmented footprint. This scattering makes traditional large-scale strikes less effective, but it also plays directly into the strengths of the precision weaponry discussed earlier: small diameter bombs and laser-guided rockets capable of hitting scattered, specific targets without requiring massive firepower. In many ways, the emerging drone technology and the current munition strategy are built to complement each other, addressing a battlefield that keeps becoming more decentralized. What makes this moment particularly significant is the pace at which these systems are being pushed toward deployment. Military planners are reportedly eager to expedite these technologies into active use, recognizing that traditional platforms alone may not be enough to manage a conflict defined by dispersed proxy networks, drone swarms, and rapidly shifting fronts. Whether these systems arrive in time to shape the current campaign, or whether they define the conflict's next phase entirely, remains an open question. What is clear is that this confrontation is no longer confined to a single tactic or a single type of aircraft. It has become a layered contest involving precision munitions, economic pressure through blockade, coalition-based air operations, and now the early integration of autonomous drone support. Iran's leadership faces mounting difficulty concealing losses, sustaining revenue, and maintaining plausible deniability over its proxy forces. As pressure builds across each of these fronts simultaneously, the coming weeks will likely reveal whether Tehran shifts toward restraint or continues down a path of retaliation that has, so far, yielded little beyond further losses. Either way, the tools now entering this theater suggest that however this conflict evolves, it will look markedly different from the one that began it.